Welcome to the Music Reel. I'm your host, Nicola Burton. Today, I have the pleasure of speaking with Dr. Eve Klein. Now, Eve is an award-winning composer, music artist, sound artist, and academic. Eve, it is a pleasure to meet you today. Thanks for joining me.
Yeah, thanks for having me, and hi, everyone.
Well, look, I really wanted to talk to you from an academic perspective because I know you've done so much work in the field of music. The events of 2020 that have changed our industry so greatly. We've had 6 months of no meaningful income, not just for people on stage, but front of house, side of house, back of house. It's just unprecedented, how we would never have imagined that this would happen, but here we are. In terms of, looking into the future, how do you think that these the influence of these events will actually change the direction of the music industry? So say, for example, we're in 2050 right now and we look back and go, this is what 2020 did to our industry. What are your thoughts, Eve?
Yeah, so I think it's pretty complicated. I think there's the question of who's going to survive and what will it look like. And they're not necessarily always going to be the same people continuing through, I think. One of the things that's really important to acknowledge in the outset is that a lot of venues, a lot of arts organisations, a lot of individual artists and practitioners didn't come into the COVID crisis from a position of strength. And it's got to be acknowledged that the sector has been really inventive and doing great things in Australia, but it hasn't really been nurtured, and it hasn't been nurtured for a long time. So just thinking about arts funding in particular, there's been systemic kind of cutbacks since around about 2013. So a lot of organisations were already being nimble and doing all of the things that you do in order to become entrepreneurial in your outlook, to seek new funding sources. But, Australia doesn't have the same traditions of philanthropy, for example, that you would see in the United States, which is a really important contribution to arts and cultural organisations there. We also don't have the same sort of speculative investment from industry and business. So our ensembles, our companies, while they're doing all of these innovative things, they're not necessarily getting capital investment in the same way that organisations are overseas as well for those activities. So we perhaps as a sector have come through a tough time already. So coming into COVID, there's not a lot of reserves for organisations and venues and practitioners to draw upon. People have been doing incredible things, pivoting to online, so offering all kinds of different services. So from lessons, consulting, coaching, you can get some of your favourite artists to write you songs and lyrics and birthday cards and all kinds of stuff. You can go to concerts in many artists' lounge rooms. You can see theatre perform. It's just been incredible in that sense. So there is this renaissance of online art happening, but that to me also doesn't look very sustainable.
It's not, and as you say, the artists are able to do that, but the actual structure behind that has been limping on for a while. And we've noticed that as well. There's a distinct lack of data flows in our industry. So, our agency is 30 years old and we've got this integrated system where we've been able to track the data, but we're very, very rare. Most people don't do that. And I've been speaking with these peak bodies all across Australia and they've said, look, we know there's no ability for us to say how many people are actually working, what are they actually earning, what's the contribution to the economy. So when we go, cap in hand to the government to ask for funding, we don't really have that meaningful data to back up our claim. And as you very rightly said, we have been limping. We haven't really been running it like a business, have we? We really haven't.
No, and so, there's a lot of different things in terms of online revenue. So you have client management and all of those sort of metrics-based kind of value kind of systems in the economy. But digital content, let's face it, it's also worth less than the way that you exchange content in the real world through gigging, through merchandise and that sort of thing. And while you have mechanisms for that online, it still doesn't pay as well. And you also need to have the infrastructure set up and ready to do it well. So, artists are reconfiguring on the fly right now, but it's not necessarily the way that they're setting up things now isn't what you would necessarily do if you were to be making a move to an online version of your business in a planned and strategic way.
So what are your thoughts then in terms of where the investment actually needs to go in the infrastructure, the ecosystem of our industry? Where would you actually start?
Well, I think we probably need to be looking at funding our small to medium organisations, giving them support for setting up the platforms that they need. So from what my perspective on the industry is, I don't do industry data crunching within my research because I have a very strong practitioner element to the work that I do. So I make work for festivals, I do commissions for organisations, and also do some sort of consulting advice. So the perspective that I have is from that side of things. But the organisations and festivals that I'm working with, they're very clever. They mostly have a really good product that they've developed for a long time and refined. So their brand identity is strong, the music that they make is excellent, but it's about giving them support that they need to do things like set up a website infrastructure that can handle streaming, that can handle things at multiple locations and sites because people aren't necessarily able to get to the same physical location to do the work that they do, giving them administrative support, technical support to do this sort of thing, even just getting access to assets that you need like photo material, video content to go on websites to help with that kind of points of connection on social media. That needs resourcing, and it's not necessarily something that arts organisations have or have a skill set to do, so they might need training as well as access to the platforms.
So that's outlining a bit of an opportunity for the industry really when you think about it.
Oh, for sure. And I mean, even the things that people have been hacking together are pretty exciting. One of the things I've been noticing, I'm doing a little bit of work with Ensemble Offspring this year, and I've loved watching them do at-home concerts where they're doing very small gigs in the back of people's backyards, but then also things like the Arts Centre of Melbourne, the Sydney Opera House are doing live stream concerts, and you can see, high fidelity camera angle, multiple camera angle versions of your favourite artists performing concerts and buy tickets in that way. There's quite the extreme from the sort of lo-fi and local through to the high fidelity digital adaptations that are going on, and it would be really great to see those supported and to help organisations make those transitions in strategic ways.
Very, very, you're giving us some good information here, Eve. I hope everyone who's listening is just writing this down because it's great. Because now you specialise in teaching, in learning design, right? So you've
one of my hats, yeah.
One of the many things that you do. Now, I'm thinking we've got this great change, this great reset in our industry. How does that impact and change the way that you design learning for our industry moving forward?
Yeah, so, I mean, there's been some really good things. I think most people need immediate short-term skills. So short courses, webinars, those sort of contained format stuff is what we need right now. Probably what we need long term, particularly for organisations who are pivoting right now, is some sort of 12-month to 2-year mentoring program. And it would be amazing if we could bridge connections between people who do entrepreneurial investment and business management, people who do technology, particularly web-based technology platforms and app design, with our arts organisations. And so have this the 3-way mentoring, because I feel like most of the business organisations and tech organisations, because I work across art and tech in my everyday interactions, technologists, tech companies benefit from artists and they benefit from creative perspectives, and so does business. So if there could be some sort of mentoring system or support structure that is set up, I know that places like the Australia Council are looking to do those sorts of initiatives, but if we could make sure that those come through, I think there'd be some pretty exciting things to come happen, and the organisations which survive could end up perhaps coming to something that is different, is sustainable in a different way.
I agree, because it's really a collaborative process in our recovery plan, isn't it? And as you say, the creative thinking from our side could have such a benefit in business, such a benefit in IT, and then, you know, everyone sharing their skills. Yeah, I think that sounds to me like a really good roadmap plan, like a nice little blueprint that we can sort of start looking at. So, I mean, you're in Queensland right now, aren't you?
Yeah.
It's quite sobering when you see that there's the Reset Festival happening this weekend in Darwin, which is super exciting. A music festival, yes. And we've got, in October, obviously, as you know, we've got the AFL Grand Final happening with 30,000 people. Yet pubs and clubs can still only have between 60 to 100 people per room. Yeah. So it's such a cost prohibitive exercise for them to be able to continue to have live music. And that's the reality, is that our music industry is almost, I think it's at about 5% recovered since March, which is not very much at all. How do we, while we're working with these restrictions, preserve those supply chains so that when we come out of this, we still have musicians that actually want to go out and gig? What are your thoughts on that?
Well, the obvious one is preserving the organisations and the skills of the people in those organisations. So access to JobKeeper is really important, and that's been, you know, pretty erratic for most people in the arts sector, just because of the nature of short-term contract work. But because one of the things is to be, you know, a musician, to be an actor, to be a lighting designer, to be someone who codes. You know, you need to do it every day to keep those skill sets up, to be at that sort of fully professional standard. And that's what we're, you know, seeing suffer, is that people aren't actually able to do their work. You maintain the skills, the organisations maintain sort of peak fitness, if you might use a terrible term, by doing what they do, and maintaining a continuity of development, of thought, of planning. So we need to find ways to help with that continuity of what people do, and for the ways to, if they have to put pauses on major projects or things that they're researching, that they can come back to them afterwards. So that might mean strategic organisational funding support. It might be finding ways to partner other kinds of funding with organisations. So, you know, again, I think we need to ask government, but we also need to ask business how they could benefit from partnerships with our arts organisations and our cultural organisations. Because I think you find that there's pretty exciting things that could come out of that, you know, deep level partnership, which people now have a little bit of time and space to think creatively about what they would do. So we're outside of our cycle of productions for a lot of instances. For venues, they don't necessarily have the same schedule ahead of them, but they have space, they have a pool of talent. Could they be doing other things with those venues in partnerships with business?
I love it.
Generating content or experiences that can then be, you know, put out both now and into the future.
It's such a great idea, because every business needs content, don't they? And you've got this pool of talent that are wonderfully talented at doing content. As you say, there are venues. It's like, if you piece them all together, it's a win-win for everyone.
Yeah. And I would love to see, you know, our businesses commissioning composers to make original soundtracks for, you know, internal videos and training videos. I'd love to see them commissioning actors for those sorts of things as well, but also thinking about how they could make their web content more exciting. Can you imagine if corporations actually commissioned artists to help them with their web content?
It's absolutely brilliant. You have created the best business model today, right now, Eve. Go out there and paint. It's brilliant. And anyone who's watching, I think Eve is giving you some wonderful wisdom to really take away and think, all right, we actually have got a great opportunity in front of us, because we are creative and we don't just follow the bouncing ball. We actually go, I'm going over here. And that's how we got to be where we are in the first place. So Eve, what a great lot of ideas you've actually thrown at us today. Thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking the time and sharing such great knowledge with everyone. So what have you got coming up that you can sort of share with us so people know what you're doing?
Well, right now I'm working on an incredible project with Ensemble Offspring, the Sydney-based art music ensemble, and we've got a public call out. We're making with the community an artwork, so it's a combination of a music performance and online, and eventually after COVID, a real-world exhibition and performance, looking at what home means to everyday people, and if we're worried about climate change impacting our homes, or if it already has. So a work like this was planned before last year's summer bushfire season, but obviously that's become part of the resonance of the work. My home was just half destroyed in a storm last year. In fact, this is my studio, this very bare walled white room. The walls have just gone up. So we're looking for objects, digital or real world, and stories, and people to interview about anything. So if you have an object that reminds you of home, if you've picked up something, you know, in your garden or on the walks about the things about the places, or something from your childhood, or something from the home you left behind, we'd love to know its story and how you're thinking and feeling about the future. So you can go to my website, eveklein.com, and see more and contribute if you're interested.
Well, I will make sure I have all that information in, because I think at this time when we've, like you said, we've got time, home has been such an important aspect for us for the last 6 months. So it's a very timely project. I wish you the best with that. And Eve, thank you so much for talking to me. Dr. Eve Klein, everyone. Make sure you check out what she's doing. Eve, thank you so much and take care.
Yeah, and take care everyone at home too.